Canadian Clean Reset plan needs to include building energy efficiency incentives. Learn how and why, and hear how a $250 million investment in one province created 5,200 jobs, $900 million in economic activity, and $800 million in energy savings, all of which produce government revenue. This is a plan all of Canada should implement right now. Join us for the Clean50 CleanReset panel on the incredible opportunities for all of us. Hi there. Welcome to the Clean50 CleanReset webcast series. I'm your host, Gavin Pitchford, the CEO of Delta Management Group and also the Executive Director of the Canada's Clean50 Awards organization. Delta is 28 years old. Today, we're the only executive search firm in Canada whose practice is now devoted exclusively to green professionals. Our typical mandates include Chief Sustainable Development Officers, ESG analysts, clean tech CEOs, smart building strategy experts, or environmental NGO leaders. As we launched this then new area of practice some 10 years ago, we became aware of two things. First, that solving climate change was going to take insight and ideas from every single corner of the economy. And second, that sustainability leaders in different silos were simply not engaging with each other as they needed to be. So to meet that need, we founded the Canada's Clean50 Awards program. And every year since, we've identified, recognized, and most importantly, connected 50 individual leaders, 10 emerging leaders, and the project managers from the top 20 sustainability projects across the country and from every possible segment of the economy. Each year, we bring all of these new honorees together at the annual Clean50 Summit. We connect them with each other and also with our existing Clean50 members. We now have some 600 amazing people who have won Clean50 awards for their impact in fighting climate change. They range from the CEOs and senior executives of organizations like Loblaw, HP, and Unilever, to brilliant R&D scientists, and to entrepreneurs you've never heard of, toiling away at small business and labs and universities across the country. Today, we're presented with the COVID-19 crisis. Typically, when crises hit, governments push panic buttons and jump on any project to create jobs, as long as it's shovel ready. We build a bridge here, an extra line of highway there, and soon after, the jobs go away. The problem with that approach is that it's incredibly short-sighted and at best a temporary fix. What we need to do instead is to have a clean reset strategy, shovel ready and shovel worthy, projects to rebuild Canada's economy and do so with durable long-term jobs in strategic industries. How? By focusing on investing in the low carbon economy, one that can grow and prosper as climate change increasingly impacts the entire globe. Climate solutions alone are expected to be a $26 trillion opportunity over the next 9 years, and Canada can get its share. But to do so, we need to decide right now if we want to be one of the suppliers or build another lane of highway and become the buyers of those solutions. For every $1 million our government invests in the dying fossil fuel extraction industry, we get just 2.7 jobs. But done right, an investment in just about any part of the low carbon economy generates between 3 and 5 times that number, and as many as nearly 10 times that number. Between 7 and 20 odd jobs per $1 million of investment, depending upon the industry segment. Best of all, a lot of that investment is just that, an investment, money that will be repaid or recouped by taxpayers, not swallowed up because some Saudi-based oil sheikh or the Russian oligarch decided to bump production and push down oil prices to a number that puts Canada out of business. When the COVID crisis hit, about 100 of our members immediately recognized we had this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, that when we reset, that when we use that incoming government impetus spending, we could do so to set Canada on a clear path to a more prosperous future where we export our brain power instead of our resources. 58% of Canadians support that idea. This group of industry experts spent several weeks working on a plan as to how we might best invest government stimulus spending to expand our low carbon economy. And then on Earth Day, we put that plan forward in a letter to the government, ultimately signed by over 220 members of the Clean50, 170 of their employers, ranging from multinationals like HP Canada and Unilever to small, medium enterprises. Another 35 organizations, including the Green Party of Canada and the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, immediately endorsed the plan. The latter said our plan wouldn't just create jobs, it would save lives and cut government health costs. And now, via a series of web and podcasts, we're bringing together expert panels to discuss various elements of our Clean Reset plan and discuss the ways in which our proposals can help Canada rebuild with a low carbon economy and millions of future-proof and durable jobs. There are approximately 400,000 buildings and 10 million homes in Canada. Excluding the homes, the real estate sector in Canada has approximately 4 billion square feet of space, and they're worth just under $1 trillion. In 2018, collectively, buildings were Canada's third largest source of carbon pollution, at about 12.7% of our total, coming in behind transportation, which is 25.5%, and the oil and gas sector, which is a staggering 26.5% of our total emissions. Some of those buildings are over 100 years old. Almost all of them are inefficient to some greater or lesser degree. Building codes across the country still allow development of large commercial or residential buildings to be built with marginal energy efficiency in most parts of the country. If the developer plans to operate the building, then most of the time they take more care. But if they plan to flip it or sell it to individual condo owners, they take much less care. So net, there's a tremendous opportunity to substantially reduce our GHG emissions from buildings by doing two things: retrofitting them to make them vastly more efficient, or in the case of larger commercial buildings, tuning them, called recommissioning, to optimize them to be as energy efficient as possible. When it comes to our individual homes, much of our housing stock still features lousy insulation and single pane windows, and a 21st century upgrade of well over half of our housing stock could cut our combined energy use by a substantial percentage. In fact, I'm speaking to you from a 130-year-old home in Toronto that when I moved in had virtually no insulation and was all single pane windows. Since then, with the help of some government programs, I've spray foamed the inside of almost all the walls, replaced all but one of my windows, and upgraded my boiler to a much more efficient model, all of which have allowed me to eliminate over half of my radiators, and in total my energy use has been cut literally in half. All of that money went to Canadian contractors and Canadian retailers, and through them, a lot of it went to Canadian window manufacturers, contributing to a lot of paychecks. I'm not sure I could have done all of that without some of the programs offered by various governments and utilities. Certainly those funds enabled and inspired me to maximize the efficiency of all the products I used. That's the power of government incentives. And so that's our topic today: how to leverage post-COVID government reset spending into doing three things: making a significant cut to our GHG emissions that come from buildings, to helping individual Canadians and commercial and residential and real estate operators make their homes and offices more energy efficient, saving everyone a lot of money going forward, which, especially post-COVID recovery, is going to be increasingly important for commercial property owners. And finally, and most importantly, creating many thousands of well-paying jobs in numerous sectors, from engineers to toilet installers, from coast to coast. Our panel today has 4 Clean50 award-winning industry experts on these matters, coming to us today from COVID hideouts in the Eastern Townships, Midtown Toronto, and from offices in Calgary and Vancouver. Welcome to Philippe Bernier of Triovest, representing commercial real estate operators, Monica Curtis of Efficiency Alberta, who will speak to the opportunity for homeowners and SMEs, Julia Langer of the Atmospheric Fund, who knows more about how to finance building retrofits than anyone else in Canada, and finally Thomas Mueller of the Canadian Green Building Council, the country's leading expert on the green building sector. Welcome, and thank you to all of you. We're going to start with Thomas Mueller. Thomas has been the president and CEO of the Canada Green Building Council, CAGBC, since 2005. He leads the Council's National Green Building Strategy, their programs and standards, along with advocacy and policy initiatives. In 2018, he was appointed CEO of Green Business Certification Inc. Canada to deliver advanced building performance standards to the industry. He joined Canada's Clean50 in 2015. Thomas, as a person who's been focused on building standards in Canada for decades, can you please help us frame this conversation? Beyond simple safety measures to ensure buildings are secure and don't fall down in a windstorm, why do building standards matter? And what do we gain from investing in retrofits?
Thanks, Gavin. I think what people don't realize is that 30% of carbon emissions in Canada are associated with buildings and with homes. And we always think about, when we think about carbon emission, we always think about transportation and factories, but the fact is that the building sector is the largest contributor. And what's also different about the building sector is that once you build it, it will last for a very long time. So a house lasts 20, 40, 50, maybe more years. An office building can last up to 60, 80, 100 years. So it means that those buildings without retrofit will continue to emit carbon at the level they were built at the time. So that's pretty significant, and it's really important to keep in mind. Now, there are really three strategies when it comes to the building sector and how we can reduce carbon emission, and it's really related to standards. And first of all, we need to really start building to zero carbon, so very low carbon performance. Second one is we need to retrofit larger buildings to scale. The net reductions between now and 2030, which is our first milestones, will come from existing buildings, because theoretically any new building adds some carbon to the atmosphere. And a third one then is that we need to really train the workforce to be skilled and prepared to actually deliver green, low carbon buildings at scale. So that's the kind of the short version of what we need the building sector to do, and what we need policymakers and the public to do, either if you're a building owner that owns an office building, or you're a homeowner that owns a home. I think that it cuts across the sector. Now, standards are really important because, like everything in life, we actually need to measure things. And we at the Canada Green Building Council, we're setting standards like LEED, which stands for Leadership in Environment, in Energy and Environmental Design. That is a global standard for green building now that covers all areas from energy to carbon to water to transportation and to human health. But the important thing about these standards are they're advanced, they're ahead of the building code, and what they intend to do is to set standards for the industry to follow, to lead this change, and then also at the end of the day that we measure and we verify that actually these buildings achieve the performance they're supposed to. And this is a very important discussion that's been going on for a long time, that performance and verification and ongoing benefits from these buildings is hugely important.
A lot of our commercial buildings are also quite old, 10, 20, 30, even 100 years old. They provide our cities with character and beauty, and most aren't about to be torn down anytime soon. And even some commercial buildings built last week are often inefficient users of energy. So we're going to check in with someone who focuses on these issues for one of Canada's largest commercial landlords. Philippe Bernier is Vice President, Innovation and Sustainability at Triovest Realty Advisors. Triovest has over $11 billion in real estate assets under management and $2 billion in development. Philippe is a PEng, a LEED accredited professional. He holds a master's in engineering for sustainable development from the University of Cambridge in the UK, as well as a degree in civil engineering from Queen's University here in Ontario. He joined the Clean50 in 2016 as an emerging leader. Philippe, where are we now in the world of commercial real estate? And what does the opportunity look like for us right now to take this moment and move forward?
Gavin, right now there's a lot of interest, appetite, and capacity to execute retro commissioning, which is basically in a real different world sense, that's like bringing your car in for a tune-up. We might change our own oil, but sometimes you need to bring your car in for a multi-point inspection. That's what retro commissioning is for buildings, as well as retrofits. This is, for example, when our furnace goes, putting in a new, more efficient model, adding more insulation, replacing old lights with new. there's a lot of interest and appetite and a ton of execution in commercial real estate as well as residential in our country. Right now, we're also facing a collective challenge where we are cash constrained. The COVID-19 precipitated economic crisis is making it harder to make investments. And the challenge for many right now is how to keep the momentum going in making our buildings better, healthier, more resilient, more inclusive, so that we can build a better future for Canada and create better spaces for people.
One of the barriers I'm hearing is access to capital right at the moment, especially post-COVID. If the appetite is there and landlords need funding, why can't these rich landlords just head to the banks? For that answer and more, we're going to turn to Canada's leading expert on how to fund building energy improvements, Julia Langer. Julia has held senior leadership positions in the environment sector for 30 years. As the CEO of Atmospheric Fund, she advances solutions to climate change through impact investing, granting, influencing policies, and running demonstration programs related to energy efficiency. Julia is a recipient of the 2016 Minister's Award for Environmental Excellence, and she received a Canada's Clean50 Award in 2014 for advancing energy efficiency retrofits. Julia, can you please help us understand the options for funding these kinds of projects and the energy impacts that they enable? Why government? Why not banks?
Thanks, Gavin, and thanks for organizing this. The business case is very interesting. This is amongst the many ways to reduce carbon emissions, one that is, as bankers say, NPV positive. It generates more return than you invest. But obviously, you have to invest. It doesn't drop from the sky. And that's where we get into the financing. And so understanding the business case is important. In this moment, we also have a climate crisis as well as a COVID crisis. So we need to do multiple things at once. And to meet our targets, as Thomas was saying, this is a huge opportunity, but we have to go a lot deeper in terms of the emission reduction potential that we get out of each building retrofit. And we need to go a lot faster in order to meet our targets. And we need it at scale, because right now, this has been a very disaggregated, so many buildings in our country, and we have to retrofit all of them by 2050, maybe twice, each of them, sometimes twice in that sort of cycle. And so where's the money going to come from? And that's the other piece of the opportunity that we cannot miss. Right now, it's about how, not if, we're going to invest in retrofits. And the pace and scale of stimulus funding is that huge opportunity. And what we need to do is take this moment to match up public money. So the federal government, the provincial governments, investing in a way that crowds in private funding. And so the two types of money have different expectations of return. You can put them together in mix and match ways so that we get an excellent business case, so that each investor gets the kind of return that they need. For public, it's either zero interest or sometimes even grants. For commercial investors, it can be, a commercial rate of return. But I think that's also an opportunity, because we see pension funds, individual investors, banks wanting to put money into impact to get, not just financial return, but social and environmental return. Energy efficiency in buildings, retrofits, is a great way to do that. So lots of things kind of coming together. No end of barriers, which we can get into, but opportunities as well.
We've heard about the commercial real estate perspective. We have 10 million homes in Canada, though. Does a program such as this also work on a smaller scale for individual homeowners? For the answer to that, we're turning to the woman who has just led one such remarkable program in Alberta, Monica Curtis. Monica has worked in energy efficiency for over 25 years, designing and delivering programs in Canada and the USA. She's currently the CEO of Energy Efficiency Alberta, where in just 3 years, the agency took $250 million investment in an energy efficiency program from the Alberta government and transformed it into $950 million in economic activity, nearly 5,200 jobs, and generated an amazing $800 million in savings from emission reductions and improved energy use for ratepayers. As a result of that remarkable impact, she joined the Clean50 last year. Monica, you've proved the business case for this 10 times over, but please take us through a little bit more detail about how the Alberta program worked and drill a little further into your actual results.
Thanks, Gavin, and thanks for the opportunity to share the experience of Alberta and the opportunity that that could become for other places in Canada. Energy Efficiency Alberta has delivered a full suite of energy efficiency programs serving commercial, industrial facilities, as well as individual households and affordable housing organizations. There's two components to the approach that we've taken to programming. The first one, and some of the other speakers have also referred to those, is really working with our service providers. So providing training and service support to electrical contractors, insulation, heating, ventilation, air conditioning contractors, engineering firms, retailers, and the distributors that handle the high efficient equipment in the marketplace. Working with these groups ensures that they are able to provide high efficient options to business and homeowners. And the second part of our programming has been to provide financial incentives to help with the cost of equipment and the cost of insulation. Specific to households, over 240,000 households have chosen to work with our program to improve the use of energy in their home, installing over 17 million high-efficient products, lowering energy use, which means lowering energy costs, and increasing the comfort and value of their home. In total, this has created nearly $600 million in energy saving and emission reductions for the participating households over the life of that equipment. I want to point out a couple of things about our program approach. The first one is that our financial incentives are not arbitrary subsidies. Oftentimes there's concern around, what are we paying households for? Our program specifically calculates the value of the energy savings to the utility system and the value of the emission reductions to the province, and uses that to determine the value of the financial incentive to participating homeowners. That means the program has delivered $3 in value for every $1 invested by the program. This experience can be replicated across Canada. There are utility energy efficiency programs, provincial agencies like ourselves, not-for-profit organizations, and as well as the service providers, so contractors, engineering firms, distributors, and the like, who already today are doing carry energy efficient products and are delivering energy efficiency projects. Translating that into a more robust program that really accelerates the adoption of energy efficiency is possible, and we've shown that. In a matter of months, in early 2017, we went from a newly legislated organization to programs in market, and have engaged households across the province in participating in programs. And that kind of opportunity to go to scale is something that absolutely could be replicated across Canada. Over 5,200 jobs have been created through all of our programs, not just the residential programs, but across our portfolio. And I wanted to share one example in terms of how that can help all kinds of households. We have a affordable housing program. We've retrofitted over 22,000 affordable housing units. This will save the province $14 million in operating costs, and it created 280 direct jobs, high-skilled jobs in communities across the province, delivering on that program. So there's a great opportunity for energy efficiency in the residential sector that can be leveraged and leveraged our existing resources across the country and launched to a meaningful scale in relatively short order.
So jobs, so critical to our stimulus clean reset spending and so critical in Alberta, Stats Can tells us that government investment in the oil and gas and the fossil fuel sector produces an average of 2.7 jobs for every $1 million invested. The program that you just ran, Monica, just produced 10 times that number. By my math, it's over 20 jobs per $1 million invested. And yet, stunningly, despite the jobs created in a province desperate for jobs, despite the emission reductions in a province struggling to reduce emissions, and despite all the benefits to Alberta taxpayers and energy bill reductions equal to 3 times what the government's spending, and all the income taxes paid by those 5,200 workers, the Alberta government, led by Jason Kenney's Conservatives, have just elected to cancel the program. That's just blowing my mind. Sometimes you gotta wonder, does Jason Kenney actually want Albertans paying more carbon taxes? More Albertans being out of work? Monica, I know you asked me not to stray into politics, but I have to say, in the face of this kind of move, I find it really hard to keep silent. Let's focus for jobs for a minute. Do the rest of you see a similar impact from spending on energy efficiency, recommissioning or energy retrofits? Julia, can we start with you?
This is definitely one of the best job creating opportunities, at least in the energy sector writ large. And it's interesting that already over 400,000 people work in the efficiency sector. So, as Monica was saying, people who are doing HVAC installations, people who are planning the retrofit, so engineering, skilled trades, laborers, etc. And so we do have some data already from a range of retrofits, whether that's in multi-unit residential buildings or commercial buildings or homes, of what's called the multiplier. So how many jobs per dollar spent? And it is in that sort of 14, 15, sounds like upwards of 20 per million. So it is a huge opportunity to put people back to work. And the reality is that these are existing trades. We just need more of them. And so it's not like some zippity doodah new, nobody knows how to do it. These are things that we know how to do. They are never offshored because retrofits happen right here. These are projects that, unlike infrastructure, which take years and years and years to ramp up, to plan and approve and all of that, you can complete a retrofit of a multi-unit residential building in a year. And so that really feeds into the stimulus recovery agenda. So we can actually put people to work doing low carbon work, relying on sort of trades and skills and capacities that we already know how to do. We just need more people doing it. And one of the things that strikes me is that the pandemic has really particularly hit women hard. So women are sort of more unemployed now proportionately. And what an amazing opportunity to actually get women in the workforce, women back to work in something that has a very high social and environmental benefit. One of the conditions has been that in Toronto community housing, we employ people from the community. And so there's a great organization called Building Up, which is an entryway for people to get into the workforce, to get trained, and then sort of a pathway to trades. And so they started Building Up, got the contract to do the toilet installations. And it's just a great way to put people to work in their own community. And knowing that there's a pathway to work in the construction area where they're really needed.
Wow, that program sounds awesome. I think, Thomas, you have also done some work in terms of seeing what the employment impacts of retrofits and recommissioning look like. Can you give us a sort of a cross-Canada look?
I certainly can, Gavin. We did an estimate because building retrofit for us is a very important sector. And we did actually an estimate because we wanted to find out what would it take for the retrofit market, particularly larger buildings. What are the carbon benefits that we could get? And what would be some of the other benefits? And we kind of summarized it under the terminology called the retrofit economy. And we wanted to see what the impact was. So if we retrofitted all buildings over 25,000 square feet in Canada between now and 2030, that would result, actually, we would save about 21 million tons of carbon. It would help us save $6.2 billion in energy costs. It would contribute $32 billion to the GDP in Canada. And it actually would create, by 2030, 260,000, almost 261,000 jobs. That is significant. And so when we talk about building retrofit, it's not always just about the environmental aspects, but it's also about the larger impact this will have on the economy. And that's the reason why we are proposing that building retrofit is really one of the important pillars when we talk about the economic recovery post-COVID-19. And in addition to that, what you have to think about too is, like, buildings are built for people, right? So if you actually retrofit a building, if you have a building with better ventilation and better lighting, and better finishing materials, that actually is also good, as shown, is good for the people that either work, from a health perspective, for people that either work in those buildings, people in schools, any building that you retrofit. There's the environmental benefits, there's the economic benefits, and then there are also the health benefits. So it's really a triple benefit you can harness just from investing in building retrofit at scale.
In terms of job creation and delivering results across, as Thomas mentioned, the triple bottom line, we found as an organization that we've been able to accelerate by tapping new talent to come into the team as energy managers. We now have 2 dedicated energy managers on the team, one of which is, or maybe soon will have been, funded by Energy Efficiency Alberta, and another in Ontario. The results that they've been able to achieve with some partial funding from utility grid sources and others is remarkable. Like, just looking at last year's 2019 efforts, and a lot of these measures are low cost, no cost changes, like just checking that the temperature set points are right or pressures are correct in systems and balanced. De-lamping, sometimes our buildings have more lights than they actually need as you put in new bulbs. Pretty simple stuff, some a bit more complicated. We last year just avoided, with the help of these 2 individuals, $2 million in ongoing energy costs, equivalent to taking 500 homes out of commission across the country, avoiding emissions and that. Super accretive investments that, in terms of payback, generally have a payback of 2 years or less. It's a no-brainer, and because of some help to get an organization like ours really moving and focused on retrofits and recommissioning, it's triggering all sorts of jobs. It's pulling the supply chain, and we're starting to make a material difference in the quality of the space for everyone we serve. It really helps.
Philippe, in addition to the incentive programs, is there other things that governments could help you do that would have a material impact on your business?
In terms of one practical problem that not just Triovest, but the industry is wrestling with, I wonder why in 2020 we've not yet figured out how to introduce a utility data standard for all Canadian utilities to provide secure digital access to consumption to their customers. We participated in a disclosure challenge that was led by the Canada Green Building Council, where we, alongside 4 other Canadian leaders, sought to voluntarily disclose the building environmental performance across our portfolio. Energy, consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, water. Anyone can publicly go online on CAGBC and find this information. It was beautifully presented. What we discovered is all of us, all leaders voluntarily seeking to disclose, struggled to get access to our data. So one big change, Gavin, that could help spark a lot of innovation across the country, it doesn't cost a lot of money, is if we could work together to encourage our utilities to adopt a data standard to help all of our all customers see how we're doing, measure progress over time, and benchmark to know if you're doing well or not. Feedback's really important.
Got it. Okay. I saw Julia nodding there.
When we collect data, that we should actually have every building being reporting its energy use. We know then who are the bad performers, who are the amazing performers, what's the average, and everybody should have to be at least average, over a certain amount of time. We can drive this. We are not going fast enough or deep enough. And sometimes, as I said, it's not for lack of technology. We know how to do this. This is, where some of the agencies like Efficiency Alberta have come in, is a more service-oriented approach to this. And this is the moment to do that. If we need scale, if we need fast, we need support for those building owners. We need to know that this is a very dispersed sector, and we need to bring it together to, with pace and scale, and the pace and scale of stimulus.
Exactly. Monica, you've actually had some experience doing this. Why should governments get involved? Where's the opportunity beyond jobs?
I want to pick up on two of them. The first one is government does have a leadership role. We are going to see stimulus dollars coming from various levels of government across Canada in the coming weeks, months, years, in response to a variety of economic conditions in the country. And oftentimes stimulus dollars struggle to find their way to some of those economic engines, and small businesses is a big part of that. And so providing energy efficiency is delivered locally, so it's local businesses in local buildings. And so providing leadership from government in terms of thinking about the stimulus dollars and thinking about, it doesn't necessarily mean there's investments being made in supporting small businesses, and looking at how we can help small businesses to play a meaningful role in the kind of service that Julia just described. Oftentimes the first person you call when the furnace doesn't work is your furnace repair provider. Imagine having them trained so that they could do a basic assessment of the general energy needs of the home, and being able to help that homeowner not just change the furnace, but actually improve their energy use on a long-term basis. If we could invest in our small businesses in that way to empower them, that would have a long-term meaningful impact. So that's an example of how government can show leadership in terms of where it chooses to put stimulus funding. Another role of government is in demonstrating leadership. So actually showing, investing in public facilities and using public facilities as a training ground and a demonstration space for not so much technologies, because as has been pointed out a few times today, we have the technology. It's having the infrastructure in place to be able to help people actually put that into their buildings in a meaningful way or at scale. And then the third place that government can really show leadership is around looking at the regulatory barriers that do exist for energy efficiency. Again, Julia raised a really interesting point. For investors, the business case really monetizes the energy savings, for example. But there are many benefits to energy efficiency that we are not recognizing in the marketplace, and yet we do recognize those for other forms of energy. You can put in renewable energy, and there is an offset market, various forms of that across the country, that you can monetize the value of those emission reductions. Energy efficiency produces emission reductions, and yet it's harder to put a dollar value to it. Another example of that would be financial institutions don't have a way to recognize the value that energy efficiency retrofits produce. It reduces energy use, means it reduces cost, energy costs, operating costs, and yet those savings aren't recognized when calculating a mortgage or a home improvement loan or a commercial building loan. And so there's regulatory opportunities that governments can and should be looking at to be able to facilitate and enable energy efficiency in the marketplace.
So, for example, if a homeowner wanted to save a lot of money on their hydro bill or their gas bill and made their home that much more energy efficient, that should, in theory, open up more money for them to pay a mortgage. And right now, CMHC doesn't recognize that. And so banks...
That would be one example.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think it's limited to the insurers or CMHC. I mean, it's right across the value chain. Basically, the lenders don't know how to do underwriting of energy efficiency. They don't realize that it's like they say, if you produce a lot more widgets in your factory, we know what that you're going to sell them for X amount of dollars. And so they look at that as, part of the, how they calculate your worth and your loan. If you save a bunch of money, they don't, how do they compute that? It doesn't compute in their models. And so we just, that's part of the banking challenge, and making efficiency bankable. And more to the point, making energy efficiency what we would call an asset class. So we have bonds, we have equities. This is kind of an asset class in and of itself. And getting that into the capital markets and getting them enthused about this investable opportunity. And I would say both public and private, getting enthused about this opportunity to invest in energy efficiency and all its benefits is the moment that we have right now.
And I think that, just building on that a little bit, this is an area of innovation. Another place where government is leading is government often is a significant driver of initial work and demonstration of innovation, and innovation around our business models, so that we can monetize the value of energy efficiency more effectively. Innovation around things like the underwriting example that Julia just provided is creating models that financial institutions, banks, credit unions, mortgage houses could use. Is the kind of innovation that having innovation calls that are focused on building those models and distributing them and testing them is another example of the many ways that governments can lead in supporting energy efficiency and getting the jobs and cash flow that come from large scale improvement in energy use in our buildings.
There's more as well in terms of health and resiliency impacts. I want to ask Thomas about the health aspects and Philippe about resiliency. Thomas, take us through some of those.
We talk about carbon, we talk about obviously all the environmental benefits. At the end of the day, everything generates carbon. Waste disposal generates carbon. Water pumping generates carbon. Everything we do in our modern life generates carbon. So we really need to have a holistic aspect. But the carbon benefits also translate into the health benefits. And the health benefits are actually so significant that they actually overshadow everything that we do around when we think about energy or carbon. So if you're a building owner that has a business in a building, 90%, only 10% goes towards the building, right? 10% is for heating the building, for maintaining the building and paying your mortgage and so on. Actually, 90% of your investment is actually your workforce. That's your investment. 90%, think about it, 90% of your expenses and your benefit coming from the workforce. And studies long time ago, and more and more now from Harvard and from the University of Illinois, there was a study by the state of California that's probably now over 10 years old, because the state of California tried to determine if they should go to green buildings. And they started to quantify all the monetary benefits, how much they could save on energy and how much they can save from water and so on. And they estimated, because green building has more daylighting, it's healthier for you, it's proven to have less absenteeism. They said, okay, 1%, we assumed there would be 1% increase in productivity, so people get less sick, they're in a better workspace. That's quite a reasonable assumption. That 1% by far outweigh anything that you could get from any kind of a carbon emission reduction or energy reduction. So I think we need to make sure, and then that leads me kind of to my third point, is there are the environmental benefits, there are the health benefits, but I think we are our biggest enemy. So often why things are not happening, because people don't want to make them happen. And we as a species, we have this very strong desire to always go back to the status quo. We always want to go back the way things were, not where things are supposed to go. And I think that health, and to reach a wider swath of people to actually get engaged in this, is actually the health aspect, and particularly now with COVID-19, could be a tremendous opportunity, a pathway to engage more people around that green buildings that are low in carbon or green retrofits at a newer existing buildings that are low in carbon, that are low in energy, that are low in water, that are just better places to live and work, could be a tremendous opportunity for us to actually reach more Canadians to buy into that, because at the end of the day, we need all hands on board to make this happen.
Thomas, you raised some great points. One thing that's interesting from the Triovest perspective, those buildings that were the high-performing, green, healthier buildings have been able to adapt much faster to the COVID-19 rebound than some of the other properties. Those buildings that have more smarts, have more control, ability to manage indoor air quality, bring in more fresh air, do demand control. It's been fascinating, but it's been easier to manage the buildings and ensure delivery of the utmost indoor environmental quality for those buildings that were already pursuing high performance environmental. So there's a lot that our industry is collectively learning. There's all sorts of interesting things we could do with resilience. There was a phenomenal study done by Intact and the University of Waterloo that confirms for every dollar spent on resilience measures like flood prevention, emergency backup power, etc., you will generate $6 to $11 in return on investment over a 10-year period. It is so important that we harden our assets, get them ready to take these punches and bounce back. One of the best returns on investment in our changing climate is in resilience.
The best commercialization tool that we have is policy. We need standards on equipment. So we should not have inefficient air conditioners, furnaces, water taps, like everything. We need to actually put that into play as a requirement, and it can be phased. But we need to make it so.
Nodding in agreement. Philippe.
One opportunity building on that Canada has that not many other countries do. One of the most important innovations in civil engineering in 150 years is the introduction of what's known as cross-laminated timber. Big chunks, Thomas, you know this, Monica as well, huge chunks of the carbon that we're going to be putting into the atmosphere relates to the choice of building materials. And we can use wood to build really tall buildings very safely. Might there be an opportunity to create an industry about cross-laminated timber and really expand on and add value to our forestry products and also decarbonize all the new buildings that we're building?
Excellent. There's building code issues as well. We've got, I think, Vancouver and BC introduced a step code that makes a ton of sense, but it's and Ontario's code at the time was good, but it's just being relaxed, courtesy of the Ford government. Where are we on building codes, and what should the strategy be there? And the other question I'll ask that goes with that: are there more jobs in building a better building than building a worse building? Does that drive? Does a better code drive more jobs in the process?
The BC step code is really great because it gives you a line of sight, like where the code is going, and the industry knows where it's going and it can adapt accordingly. With the national code, I heard that they're also adopting a stepped approach. It's the bureaucracy around the implementation, right? And it's how we set up as a country. So you do the national code, it takes years to develop or years to update, and then it's up to the provinces to implement it, and they have a leeway when and how they want to do that. And that just the delay from creating the code to actually having action on the ground, that's years and years of time goes by. So I think probably my recommendation with that is always, I think the code cycles have to be shorter. It has to be updated, and there have to be mechanisms, a commitment by the provinces to put these codes on the ground like as fast as humanly possible. I think that would make a big difference in raising the whole ship. Would it produce exceptional buildings? Maybe not. But it would raise the whole ship, so we would have scale.
Monica?
I would agree with that the building codes, and I would say that regulation, thinking about whether it's building codes or equipment standards, businesses, it's our service providers, whether it is the equipment manufacturers, the equipment distributors, the contractors, the engineers that design it. They don't work within individual borders. Oftentimes those organizations are at least national. They have local workforces, and the jobs are local because the buildings are, the work is in the jobs. But the organizations themselves range from local small businesses that are 2 people in a truck servicing their communities, all the way up to multinationals. And that consistency is important for those service providers. They need to have time to plan for the impact that would have on their business. And they need to have the consistency so that in different parts of their business, and whether it's different parts of the province or different parts of the country, they can train their workforce to a single expectation, whether that's the building code or equipment standards in that area. And so we actually really do see that as a challenge. The regulatory framework that we have in Canada today is very fragmented, and having improvements that would support our business community by providing consistency and a line of sight.
There is an important role for the building code to play. It's, I think, the reality that it tends to follow, in many cases, as we're seeing over recent years, the leading building rating systems, which demonstrate and codify what leadership should look like. And new rating systems and ideas keep materializing to fill gaps that are not being addressed by code or being addressed consistently, including a recent Canadian innovation, the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification. There's all sorts of interesting things that we could do to improve code, and there's definitely ways in which stimulus funding, potentially, if on offer, could be tagged to certain performance requirements that could make for more inclusive, more resilient, more high-performing communities that let people get around safely and promote more economic activity.
It's just because you have a code, it doesn't mean that the building will actually perform. Either if it's a new building and it hasn't been inspected the way it's supposed to, that it hasn't been commissioned or operates the way it's supposed to, that the person or the people that use that space change what they're doing in there. They pick more people in or fewer people in there, or change their use. So there's all kinds of things that brings us back to, setting standards, either to the building code or voluntary industry standards, but the performance and the data and collecting that, it's just like tuning up your car every year. You have to tune up your building every year to make sure it's still where it's supposed to be.
That actually leads neatly into where another question I was going to ask Philippe, and that is, building automation systems presumably having some impact on your efficiency overall. Is that something that should be included in terms of helping or being something that gets funded from a stimulus perspective or from any perspective, really?
Building automation systems, especially when you get into the big buildings, these are the brains that help the buildings operate, and they do drift, and we do change things in response to, for example, a request from a tenant, and you might forget, despite best intentions, to change that thing back. There's a role, Gavin, for funding of building automation systems. There's also other things. I'm thinking, Julia, where the big challenge lies is really getting into the deep retrofits, which could be part of maybe building automation system, getting old tech into new. Big challenges that we will face is recladding and reskinning buildings. That's hard, and it has long paybacks. And it's really important to think about your cooler, trying to keep your picnic drinks cold or whatnot. Like, you need a good box to keep things comfortable inside, and the envelopes are tricky. And I think deep retrofits is where there could be some interesting opportunities for doing meaningful stimulus and driving meaningful carbon reductions.
Yeah, I want to add one comment in there. I think one of the things that's really important when we're thinking about working with our partners in government around turning stimulus ideas into real programs is that it's the experts in the field that know what the technology is that will deliver the results. So creating objectives, what is it that we want stimulus dollars to do? What is the performance that we expect that to deliver? So setting expectations around emission reductions or energy savings or job creation, whatever those drivers are. But to be very, very careful about becoming prescriptive because that can create the wrong messages in the marketplace, and has been a challenge for some programming. I would say some of the programming that we've done in Alberta, that when things are too focused on an individual technology, it becomes the technology that gets put in, even if it's not the best solution.
It's really important. I couldn't agree more about focusing on performance. One way in which, if an objective is to achieve the greatest reduction in our dependence on fossil fuels and associated emissions, we should be thinking about the return on investment, or in terms of carbon per dollar spent. I think another thing to consider is the technology trends that are underway. We're seeing immense falls in the cost of solar panels, battery storage technology. Should we be incentivizing renewables where the cost curves as manufacturing capacity ramps up globally are just driving prices down? We're at grid parity, or basically it's cheaper to put, in some cases, renewable energy. So we have to be mindful to the trends as well, so that we're not sending money after the wrong thing when the market economics are going to take care of the problem in some cases. Not all, but we have to be mindful of the greater macro trends.
And if we in British Columbia would put both transportation and buildings to be electric, they need another 5 or 6 Site C dams to actually have the kind of supply that we're currently using. So it goes back to the whole idea. We have to have significant degrees of efficiency, and we need to have significant degrees on-site renewables and other types of renewables. We cannot just rely on big, in many parts of our country, in Quebec and Manitoba, big hydro projects. We need to bring the technology also on the site. And in some jurisdictions like BC, they don't allow net metering, actually. They don't want it, they allow it to a certain extent. So it's actually a barrier that the utility put in because they want to sell their electricity and they don't allow enough. So there's these kind of barriers that we need to get through, because we also need significant increase in efficiency, and then we need a sufficient supply of clean, renewable types of energy in order to get us to our 2050 target. So that challenge is actually significant, and I'm kind of worried a little bit that people say, well, we might not make it to 2030, but we have to 2050. Well, the fact is, if you don't get to 2030, you won't make it to 2050, because you have to run so much faster to get there.
One of our other panels was unanimous in saying we need to have a national conversation that talks about strategy as to how we get to a clean carbon, lower carbon economy. And it needs to happen really, really quickly, because there just is no time left to waste. So I'm going to ask each of you to give me a 30 to 40 second, please, 30 to 40 second summary of your critical message to government. Anybody want to put their hand up and go first? Julia.
Well, we can't forget that we have a climate crisis in the midst of a COVID crisis. We need to solve them all at once and get the benefits of addressing this through efficiency is a key way. And it's not really if, but how we do this. And we need to have both public and private investment. We need to have the policy drivers to make this commercial and at scale. We need to get people to work in this space, training them and getting them into business. And I would highlight women as a potential recruitment to this workforce. And those benefits of stimulus need to not only be this year, next year in a recovery framework, but set the stage for a longer term social and environmental benefit situation in the places where we live and we work and we play. It's a really fundamental part of how we can make Canada better.
Feedback is really important to getting better in anything we do at work or at home. Buildings are no different. It's really important for each of us to be able to see how the buildings in which we live, work, and play are performing. It's important for the people who are building them and managing them to also have that feedback. Two things that would make a big difference. One is just a data standard to help get that performance feedback to people and into the market. And secondly, an expansion of building ratings, both commercially and for homes, when you buy or lease, so that you can understand what you're signing up for and have conversations constructively to try to help our buildings get better.
I'm going back, Gavin, to what I said at the beginning. I think that we support a government stimulus as part of the economic recovery towards new buildings, towards existing buildings, and towards the workforce. And I think a key concept is perform verification and continuous improvement. We need to invest, we need to have industry standards, we have building codes, and they need to be checked. We need to continuously improve our performance in our building sector. If it's a home or an office building, we need to report out, and we need to have a transparency and a public face to this, and we need to focus on outcomes, not just on good intents.
Energy efficiency improves energy use, reducing operating costs, reducing emissions, creating jobs, improving health, and providing a variety of support around resiliency. The time for action is now. In Alberta, we were able to convert $250 million of public funds, partnered with $560 million of private sector investment to improve energy use in buildings across the province. That can be leveraged today across Canada, and I hope we all do that.
I'd like to thank Julia, Monica, Philippe, and Thomas for sharing their expertise today. We've heard that buildings collectively make up about 10% of our carbon emissions, and that there is a significant opportunity to reduce that by making buildings more energy efficient. We've heard there is a significant appetite amongst commercial real estate operators to make that happen, and that those projects don't always require government grants, but they do sometimes need some help with making capital available and generating loans that can be repaid out of the energy savings. So these programs end up creating really well-paying jobs at literally no cost or very low cost to the government. And we've seen how a well-run program focused on homeowners can essentially pay for itself many times over, not only reducing emissions, but saving homeowners over 3 times in energy costs what the government spent, while creating over 20 jobs per $1 million of investment. And there's a virtually unlimited number of buildings that need to be updated. So in the end, these are durable, long-term, well-paying jobs that require everybody from engineers and architects to demolition crews. As Canadians, we're always told that the fossil fuel extraction industry is the beating heart of our economy. That's absolutely not true. And here's the other thing. $1 million invested in the fossil fuel industry produces just 2.7 jobs. $1 million invested in any of the Clean Reset programs on which we were suggesting that government focus produces somewhere between 5 and 20 jobs. Clean jobs, jobs of the future, and programs where taxpayer investment would typically be fully repaid to the government within 2 to 3 years. It's not just spending. Government can drive immediate jobs action by making some basic regulatory changes. The Clean50 CleanReset plan includes a broad range of ideas for government reset action, captured in a series of webcasts, podcasts, and videos, all featuring Clean50 award-winning experts. I encourage you to watch or listen to them all and get them from the same place where you consumed this one. More importantly, I'll ask you to do 2 other things. The first is to forward links to these videos to all of your elected officials. In particular, let's get MPs of all parties better educated on what the low carbon economy can look like for Canada, because many don't have a really good idea. The clean economy is durable, well-paid jobs that are not reliant upon the price of oil, as determined by Vladimir Putin or some Saudi sheikh. And the second thing is to send an email, or even better, make a phone call to your MP. Ask them to vote for a clean reset going forward. Tell them it's time to build a low-carbon Canada for the 21st century. For more information on the Clean50 and all our past award winners, please visit clean50.com. I'd like to thank the Trache Family Foundation and the Ivy Foundation for their incredible support, as well as that of our other sponsors who contributed to making these casts possible. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'd like to thank you for contacting your MP. It's critical. Let's make sure that this time through we have a clean reset.